Welcome to Meet the Gamechangers. This is the space where we celebrate outstanding people who are making our world better. These are the voices and stories that inspire us to dream bigger, act bolder, and be more courageous light for our planet. So let's get started with today's incredible guest.
This is Meet the Gamechangers with Rev Kev, where we dive into the stories of people transforming our world one bold move at a time.
Today, we are joined by my friend Katie Loncke, a lifelong activist who fearlessly bridges movements of racial, social, and global justice, and Rami Khader, a humanitarian and artist empowering Palestinian communities through healing and resilience. Together, they challenge us to move beyond the illusion of peace and toward true justice and liberation. Together, Katie and Rami bring us a powerful conversation on false peace versus just peace, a global conversation on healing and liberation. We're going to be talking a little bit today about what does peace really mean? And is it merely the absence of conflict or the presence of something much deeper? The presence of justice, healing, and courage. I'm so excited to welcome our guest. Katie, Rami, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Rev Kev. It's such a delight to be here, and in particular with both of you, who I just love and cherish and respect so much.
You know, Katie, you and I are Harvard siblings, and we are siblings on the front lines for so many peace and justice actions. But we're 3 a.m. friends. If you don't know what a 3 a.m. friend is, a
3 a.m. friends
is someone if you were had 4 flat tires on the freeway and you needed someone to come and get you, they would come and get Katie would come and get me if I had 4 flat tires on the freeway. And that's how this powerful conversation has started, from that place of love and respect. And then, as Katie always does with her Katie-ness, Katie brings in another 3M friend. And Rami, you are definitely in that circle of friends who are about being about the light and about powerful things, and that you'd be joining us from Bethlehem today, of all places and all things. It's such an honor. When I was a little boy, we used to sing this song, the more we get together, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. For your friends are my friends, and my friends are your friends. The more we get together, the happier we'll be. All right.
I'm honored to be here.
Welcome to the Circle of Super Friends.
Rami is a 3 a.m. friend to an entire region in the West Bank of Palestine, is sort of my impression. Living 3 a.m. friend as a lifestyle.
Wow, I'm loving it. I'm glad that we can share this with all of our friends. So let's get the conversation framed up a little bit. Let's ease in a little bit into the conversation. Katie, you wanted to open with some framing thoughts on false peace versus just peace. Can you share and define first the difference between what they are and why this conversation is so important, especially in the times that we are living in?
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So I have 3 dimensions in which I'm very curious to hear both of your thoughts on real peace versus false peace. And the first one is the one that you've already invoked, Rev Kev, which in my understanding comes to us from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and who wrote in his letter from a Birmingham jail about the white moderate that, regrettably, it seemed to him, the white moderate was more invested in a false peace, which is the absence of tension, versus a real peace or a true peace, which is the presence of justice. So white moderates were telling Black civil rights activists to tone it down, dial it back, because they were disrupting the peace. But what is peace if it's actually just perpetuating an oppressive status quo? So definitely excited to get into that dimension of real peace versus false peace, which is so relevant today, and particularly in Palestine.
Mhm.
But there are also these two other dimensions that I wanted to just quickly run by you. And one of those is, I would say, a relative peace that depends on external circumstances versus an ultimate peace that is invincible and internal and can never be destroyed. So here I think of luminaries like Fannie Lou Hamer, Nelson Mandela, Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh famously said, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. We need to be peace, right? And so I'm curious for both of you, what are the experiences and distinctions that you draw between the relative peace we all want? We want safety and health and wellness and thriving for our beloveds in a beloved community, but also there is a peace that surpasses all understanding that is independent and unconditional of external circumstances, no matter how bad things get. And I feel like I've really seen that in both of you as spiritual people. So I'm curious your thoughts there. And then finally, I'm so sorry. I'm stealing your job, Rev Kev. I'm like become the interviewer.
Oh, no.
But I'm so curious about this part too, because we're living in a late stage capitalist society that commodifies so much healing and so much subjective experience and tries to turn it into an item that can be sold back to us. And both of you, in a way, are professional providers of peace, right? So, Rev Kev, you're a minister, a reverend, a spiritual leader, religious leader. People come to you wanting peace, wanting reassurance or upliftment or enlivening. And Rami, as a counselor, as an artistic producer, and even as a trained disaster response professional, I believe, people also come to you looking for an experience of peace or feeling better, relief in some way. And what I've seen both of you do is actually reject the false commodified piece that says you need to go to a provider, a professional expert to get some peace, and instead promote empowerment and start asking the question of how can we actually source and sustain peace within ourselves, within our communities, peer to peer, or within our community networks, and even in nature, we could say, in the more than human world. So for you, what is the difference between a false piece that depends on a professional to provide it to you versus maybe a more durable or reliable piece that is decentralized and grounded in people's empowerment?
Well, let me jump in and then I'll toss to Rami. Thank you for your Katie nests once again. A big part of my work at Harvard and my interest in this field of peace and peacemaking is working with that particular type of leader that Dr. King was speaking to. He was talking to the white moderate, those that are aspirationally on board, aspirationally aligned, but want to stay in a type of comfort zone that prevents them from knowing the cost of peace from folks who don't have the privilege of stepping inside a comfort zone. And so what I have been working on is providing people with tools that will enable them to move beyond that dangerous political neutrality, that spiritual bypassing, and this false sense of everything is better if for the moment, the most immediate person who I know who is experiencing so-called injustice is with me. If we're together, then see the two of us, harmonizing means that it's peace everywhere. So my purpose for this conversation is to help people to move beyond that neutrality and to peer over into the fences of other places and spaces with people to see what the cost is for their peace and then join in at their level of capacity, not necessarily comfort. Rami, what do you say?
You know, I'm someone who have never known what the word peace means. I have never lived peace in my life. Maybe when I studied abroad from Palestine, I sensed a little bit of freedom and peace, but still occupation and still lived in my narrative. So I wouldn't say that I have lived it completely. And honestly, when I think of the word peace now, it is so hard to understand as as part of our reality at the moment. But what I have few feelings about it. Peace, if it is not the negotiation of the equals, it's always a different power dynamic. We have been in discussion and in a peace process for almost more than 25 years now, and it hasn't been anything about peace. It was a pill to silence the resistance and silence the oppressed. So for me, real peace needs to happen between the equals. And when I say the equals, it's all about not the oppressed and the oppressor, but when the oppressor wants to give freedom and rights to the oppressed. Usually, this is not the case. So it is really hard to say now, and for me to say peace is the absence of justice. Peace is the absence of equality. Without equality and without justice, it is hard to say peace. It would be false peace for me.
Yeah. And I first of all, I just want to kind of lean in with you and tell you how it struck me to hear you say, never in my life have I known peace. I just wanted to metabolize that a little bit, given your particular situatedness. And I think it's so important. And I think it connects to so many people who could also say that from a variety of different demographics, but it's specifically given where you are. And so it says to me that even though a conversation for a just peace and not a false peace is an urgent matter for where you are situated, there's an importance of a proper pacing of that conversation with individuals so that they can have space to have moral imagination and the capacity to really envision and define for themselves, right? What does that even look like? Katie, you want to tag in here? Rami, want to say more? Who wants to jump in?
I would like to expand on this. In my childhood, I have seen military occupation and invasions, even to our house as well. As a child, I was beaten by the soldiers. I have seen soldiers, military, Israeli military on the way to school. I've smelled the tear gas. I was denied to go from one camp to another, even as a child. What strikes me as a parent now, that my children go through the exact same thing I have done 30 years or 40 years ago, but it's more intense. So the absence of justice, the absence of equality, the absence of seeing us as people, this is the core of it, that Israel and doesn't see us as people. And unfortunately, world leaders, world politics has been very silent, absent, and for many of them, they really do not see us as people, as human beings, which really made me think that we really need to stop talking about peace at the moment. And we need to talk more about justice and equality more than ever, because peace has been used by the privileged, has been used by the oppressors to silence the oppressed over, and not only in the Palestinian case, in many other cases around the world as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And Rami, it was through listening to you and your colleagues with ANAR for psychosocial empowerment and with Healing to Hope, working with communities in the West Bank and occupied Palestine to lead community arts and healing programs, especially with children and caregivers. It was through listening to and learning more about your work that I really started to hear you say we need to be careful about this word peace that we're throwing around. And I've seen you use words like healing that and empowerment that I think convey and maybe justice, like you're saying, equality, freedom. There are many other words that maybe in certain circumstances are far more relevant and far more pressing and useful than peace. And this has been a really strong takeaway actually that I've gotten from your work and the way that you express it through your community commitment and just unstoppable love and creativity through the arts is, to me, more inspiring than any kind of platitudes about peace could ever be.
Katie, 3 days before they announced the ceasefire, there has been many rumors around that a ceasefire is going to happen. A deal of a ceasefire is going to happen. Suddenly, in our children group counseling sessions, suddenly the children started to draw something about hope. We have seen them during the genocide drawing bombs, killed children, destroyed houses, destroyed hospitals. But when they heard of the ceasefire, suddenly it gave them a glimpse of hope. And they started to draw like love icons flowing over the sky. They started to draw flowers growing from the rubble. And when we asked the children, to them, that was their moment of hope, even knowing that not this could not stay or sustain itself. But this is what we people need. This is what the oppressed need. They need moments where they feel that they cannot not only to survive but to thrive even under apartheid, even under a brutal occupation, a genocidal war. And I think this is where the arts, this is where healing becomes so important, because oppression and occupation is not only about the land, it's also about the minds. And oppressing the minds and occupying the minds is way more dangerous than occupying the land itself.
Mhm, mhm,
Wow. And so that's where Katie was going about this inner sense of peace. You're calling it hope. And I do believe that such an announcement could bring about hope. And I'm so happy that you're giving us like a look in, even to the children. I've been so fortunate to witness Katie's spiritual practice during this period of time, not only going to stand in solidarity and be with you there, but also this practice of creating poppies as a way of mourning the children that are lost. And we had a conversation the other day about how that practice could also be about envisioning a day of hope and a day that children we would envision the world that they were to play in, and we hold their energy and vision with us. And so to hear you say that the children that you're working with are just at the sound or the hint of a ceasefire, it's already shifting their interior. I believe that they're gaining possession over the place where real peace resides, which is within their imagination, their ability to see it. You know, it's not driven by external circumstances, but it's something inside of them that can be brought forth. And I know we have something to do with changing the outer landscape in order to influence how they are inspired. But as you can see, it didn't take but an announcement for that new life to start sprouting out. Let me just also say something. Thank you for humanizing, both of you, this issue. I think in our media in the United States, this is such a polarizing issue. It's such a divisive issue. Here you have on our in this conversation, three individuals representing three different faith orientations, representing various cultural persuasions, and yet we are people, as Dr. Mandela said, we're people through other people. And so humanizing each other is an important first step in this. And I'm so glad that Katie, you said, listen, let's just we can't have this show without Rami. It just won't be the same. Let's put it all together. I think America needs to be exposed to more conversations like this where we're looking at the not we're not looking at the propaganda, right? We're not looking at the false peace, but we're looking at human beings who are moving through an oppressive situation. And out of my sense of moral compass, out of my sense of privilege, I want to share this. In the Islamic tradition, there is a statement that says, we want for your brother and your sister what you want for yourself. And that's always the litmus test. When I have these conversations with the Black and Jewish community, we often talk about our shared struggle. That's usually how the conversation begins. We talk about our shared struggle. And I said, and yes, we have a similar struggle story. We have a stories of oppression and all of that. But I asked my Jewish relatives, I say to them, but would it be all right with you if we could also talk about our shared prosperity, our shared abundance, our shared sense of freedom? Can you imagine the dynamic in our relationship changing from landlord and tenant to co-equal property owners? Can you imagine, you know, my neighborhood looking as beautiful and as yours? The schools that my children go to are as well resourced as yours. Can you imagine that? And I think that imagination brings us brings us toward a place where we can, where the humanizing begins. When I want for you what I want for myself. Who wants to tag in on that? And boy, that time is flying. Let me stop getting on my soapbox. But you all are firing me up today, okay?
Well, let me just thank you, and I'll jump in quickly to say, Rev Kev, what you just described, I see as a signature, again, of both you and Rami, where you are here to ignite and empower other people's imaginations and other people's freedom to imagine what they want for themselves, rather than to dictate to others what is the best type of healing or what's the best type of outcome we could possibly imagine. I wanted to shout out the poppies since you mentioned them. There are some behind me. I don't know if your viewers can see them.
I can see them, yeah.
And my friend Lubna, who's living in Al-Quds in Jerusalem, has been sending me photos because it's the poppy season right now and they're blooming in Palestine. And this, for me, again, the power of the more than human world and our more than human relatives is also a part of this story of healing and hope for me. And just to even receive these beautiful photos of these incredible, wonderful flowers from my friend in Palestine is, I think, healing for both of us, certainly for me. And Rami, what you have given me some invaluable guidance and advice about the poppy artistic practice. And I remember you really emphasized that let's give people the freedom to decide for themselves what the poppy means. Don't overdetermine the significance or the ritual meaning of the poppies. Let people decide what it means to them and what they would like to do with their poppies. And I think that's just such a an incredibly beautiful signature of yours.
Mm.
Mm, mm. You know, what I loved about the puppies and the practice is that also people who are oppressed, people who are living through difficult times, it means so much to them that other people are not only feeling their pain, but they are doing something to really emphasize it and feel it and heal together as well. So this has been really significant for me in the practice of puppies, but also the practice of using indigenous arts, indigenous acts as a ways for solidarity.
All right, let me bring folks in who are wondering like what are these poppies all about? So, Katie, will you give us a bar or two on how this was one of your acts of solidarity and just define it for that person who's popping in going, what are they talking about?
Sure. So after I had the honor and delight of meeting Rami and his colleagues in Palestine and staying with some families who had invited international presence, I came home to where I live in California. And I saw that some comrades here who had been advocating for a free Palestine had started to use the symbol of the poppy, the red flower poppy, which actually rhymes with many native California poppies that are about to bloom over here these days. We have the golden poppy and some white poppies and other kinds. So we have some kinship sprouting over here. But the red poppy has become a symbol of Palestinian liberation and resistance. And so I started to fold tissue paper poppies. And as I was cutting the paper and folding the flowers and blooming the flowers with this delicate paper with my hands towards 15,000 red paper poppies, each one symbolizing at least one child who has been martyred in Gaza in particular since the escalation of the genocide in October of 2023. And the sheer volume of, spending time with each individual flower that represents an entire being, someone's entire world was quite emotional for me and really a way of slowing down and very helpful word that I learned denormalizing, denormalizing the genocide, the violence, the volume of killing of children in particular, and also leaving Palestine to be the place where there is the highest proportion of amputee children in the whole world. So through this, what is actually a collective practice of folding poppies together, we are grieving, we are mourning, we are recognizing the cost of this occupation, this genocide, this war, but we are also remaining in devotion to a vision of a free Palestine, these beautiful flowers that bloom and dance in the wind, in the air. Sometimes when we bring these paper poppies outside, butterflies will even land on them. They interact with the world in such beautiful ways. And so, we're here continuing to pay loving attention and to stand beside you, to mourn with you, to grieve with you, and to continue to try to find ways to act, resist, and move towards freedom.
Mhm. Rami, so just knowing about this practice as an act of solidarity, say more about how it lands with you. Because what I know, and this going back to Dr. King and the white moderate, this whole conversation about folks saying there's nothing I can do. It's just too big of an issue. It's just too big. I can't do anything. There's nothing. So here's an act. How does this make you feel? How does this land for you? And what does it provide for you and your people?
Sure. Well, I want to speak also from a political level, but also from a human and relationship level as well. It was so important for me to share and talk about the practice and other practices of my friends in the US who has been really vital and vocal about oppression and the genocide, and really used practices to heal themselves, but also to help to show others that they are present and they are advocating, they're on the front lines trying to speak truth to power and all of that. Because the narrative here in Palestine, dominant narrative that is coming from the US, usually it's coming from the government, which is that the government is heavily participating in the genocide. The Biden administration supported Netanyahu and his fascist government with bombs and military equipment that made the genocide possible. And now we hear Trump real estate foolish plan to really kick 2.3 million people out of Gaza and build his dream land on it. So for me, it was so important to hear stories from the US that represent the people, not the government. This is on a political level. On a human level, those relationships really make us stronger on the ground. You know, I'm someone who is leading a team of counselors and psychotherapists who are working in the West Bank. And by working in the West Bank, I mean we really tackle and talk with people about issues that are very difficult. People who have been beaten, people who have been imprisoned, children, 12 years old, 13 years old, who have been sent to jail for a year or two. And we work with their parents, we work with them. We work in Masafar Yatta, where a whole community is about to be thrown out of their property just for Israeli settlers to annex, live in their place. So it is important that we hear that we are not alone. That feeling that other people from different contexts they see the truth and they advocate for justice and peace is healing by itself for us. And I remember, Katie, when we talked about it together, and you were wondering what the puppies will do on our end. Would people value the initiative or not? And I was clear, and I felt it clearly that people need to see such practices because we really need to see that people see us as humans. They walk the walk with us for justice, peace, and freedom.
Let me just say, Rami, I want you to know that taking a look into the places and spaces where I was, particularly at Harvard University, you know, there was a narrative coming out of Harvard University that there was all this, you know, anti-Semitic feeling, and that students were not, you know, in alignment in support of the ceasefire. I want you to know I witnessed firsthand large student movement, both Jewish and Muslim and Christian and Black and white, gay, straight, all united to bring the genocide to an end. I was in many of the demonstrations. I was there after 13 students were not allowed to have their earned degrees at Harvard University. And I saw professors walk out. We walked about almost 2,000 of us walked out of commencement last year at Harvard University to go down the street to have at a church to have what we call the People's Commencement, where those 13 students who were not permitted to graduate because of their act of solidarity with this cause, we chose to honor them anyway. And I know that right now on our campus, we believe related to this, there's a shakeup and faculty who took a stand have lost their positions and some are resigning because of an kind of an institutional position. So I just want you to know that millions and certainly young people around the world are standing for and have humanized this issue. I also want to just take a minute to step into our situatedness, okay? First of all, there you are in Bethlehem, and I'm over here with my hand over my heart as the adhan is being called, and how beautiful, right, that is as you're sitting there. And it's so normal for you, but here, in Cambridge, it's not a thing that happens. So, and for those who don't know, the adhan is the Muslim call to prayer. And for most folks who are of a Christian orientation or who have this, U.S. kind of nationalistic point of view, when they think of Bethlehem, they think of baby Jesus in a manger. They don't think of anything outside of a Christocentric point of view. So just that kind of diversity that's happening right now in this conversation is so important to me. So I just want to point that out, how beautiful that was. But Katie, I also want you to name your situatedness. I want you to tell us all of the many identities that you are, because I think it's important to this whole conversation of solidarity and humanizing others. So what are the streams of identity flowing through you culturally, religiously, and otherwise? And then I'll ask Rami, and so we can unmask the three faces that are representing these streams that are humanizing one another.
Okay, sure. Well, I'm so eager also to just shed even more light on the absolutely remarkable work that Rami is doing. So I'm going to see if I could try to
Say it fast. Say it
thread
fast. And then
my
is that
identities into just the heart explosion that happens whenever
it,
I think
it,
about what
it,
Rami is
it
doing.
matters though, Katie. It
Okay,
really it
great,
does
great.
matter. I want you to going back to Rami's point earlier, right? Like when we don't see each other's humanity, when we don't see each other's humanity, okay, and how we are human. I'm an African American male, cisgender, new thought Christian minister who cares about this issue. You see, when I'm bringing all that I am into this moment. When it's left to assumption, I think in great part we don't get to the humanizing element of this is left to be assumed. And I want to be deliberate and intentional about bringing all that I am to this conversation. Okay. And boy, we've got a clock running. All right.
I
So,
know, I
Katie,
know.
Katie, real fast.
Go for
Real
the
fast.
humanizer.
All right. And
Okay,
then
yeah.
please.
Well, so my ancestry has experienced atrocities on both sides. And this is really what led me to the situation where I was able to meet Rami. So, on my mother's side, my opa, my grandfather, barely survived 4 different Nazi death camps, concentration camps. He was scheduled for the ovens and the gas chamber on multiple occasions, but narrowly escaped because he had auto mechanic skills that were more useful alive than dead to the Nazis at the time. Many of his family members were killed in that genocide, which is not the only or the most important genocide in the world, but it is a part of my ancestry and heritage on that side of my family. My oma, my grandmother on that side, as a teenager in occupied Vienna, resisted Nazi regimes by joining underground networks. So I have a little bit of like the rebellious
Mhm.
resistance streak even within my family, which I really cherish. And also on my father's side, my father's Afro-Caribbean. His people come from Dutch Guyana, from Barbados, from Jamaica, and survived the Middle Passage, survived enslavement as Africans in Turtle Island, and survived Jim Crow, and have always had a deep, deep commitment to equality, to justice, to freedom, to ending regimes of apartheid and dehumanization. So it was those partly that ancestral legacy of knowing, okay, injustice to one is injustice to all of us. That led me to travel to the West Bank and see if I could leverage some of my U.S. privilege to make things just a tiny bit safer for families and folks in Mustafariata and the occupied West Bank. So that's where how I met Rami. And then what Rami showed me and my dear beloved Wei Li was his work with children and caregivers to transform, like actually transform people's lived experience of surviving occupation. Children would play aggressively with each other because they were internalizing the militarized occupation and the violence that was being visited upon them through Israeli settlers and military, and they would enact this on each other through more kind of violent types of play. But through the community empowerment work and arts and creativity work that Rami is doing, you actually see children transform how they treat each other or how they think about themselves, which is
So let's
me.
let's shift. Let's
Okay,
shift.
I'm gonna
Rami,
stop. I'm just so excited.
Rami, yeah, and we've got to wrap it up. But I want Rami to kind of bring us home. Okay, Rami, tell us about your situatedness. With the short,
Sure.
talk your identities, but also tell us how that informs how you do this important work at this particular time. We want to give you the last word.
Sure. I come from the 1% Christians who are living in Palestine. And when people meet me and know that I'm Christian, they usually ask me, when did you convert or where did your family convert? So this is what I usually answer. I say 2000 years ago, a Palestinian Jewish man walked in this land and he converted my grandfather. His name was Jesus Christ, and this is how we became Christians. Uh, really, all the work I do has to do with my faith that humanizing people through supporting their healing process and bringing them to a state where they can really thrive even under oppression, even under occupation, has been something I have lived all my life to do. As a child, I lived in the first Intifada. As a young man, I have lived the second Intifada. Part of my 20s and 30s, I have witnessed many oppressions as well. And now in my 40s, I have witnessed a genocide. So my whole life was about genocide, occupation, discrimination, apartheid. Still, we won't let that define me. I won't let the occupation define who I am. And this is what I have been working on lately and all the time, that I want to, through healing, to freedom people in their minds, because what the occupation is dangerously doing is occupying the minds. And when you occupy the minds, it's very hard for people to see freedom. They get used to being occupied. They get used to be oppressed. And this is the most dangerous. In Bethlehem, we have a 28 feet wall that surrounds the city and almost all the cities. When they ask me what you fear about this wall, I usually do not fear it at all. What I fear is the wall, the mind wall that the Israelis are building in our heads, making us think that this is our prison is our home. And this is what's dangerous about it. We need people to feel like that they are more than victims and that they can really thrive as human beings, even under this brutal reality.
Wow, those are such powerful words. And we have to have a part two. This is just the beginning of the conversation. There's so many things I want to say more to both of you and get said. But this is just what happens when we get together. We chop it up and it just flows like it flows. But Rami, tell everyone how they can connect with you. Give us your socials. How can we learn more about the work that you're doing? And then Katie, right after him, do the same thing.
Sure. If you want to learn about Anar, it's you can see us on the internet. It's www.anar.ps. Also, you can visit our sister organization in the US called Healing to Hope, and people can visit healingtohope.org and learn about our work and how they can be engaged in our work.
Thank you so much, Rami. Katie?
People can connect with me on Instagram by following me at Katie Loncke or come to my website for relationship coaching at katielonke.com.
Thank you, Rami. Thank you, Katie. You've given us so much to open a conversation about the ways in which false peace and just peace and humanizing each other can lead to something real. I'm so grateful that you were able to be a part of today's program.
I'm so thankful. You two are such gems in this world, and it's a delight to be with you always.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for having us, Lord Kev.
It's my joy. It's my joy. And this won't be the last time. Thank you again for joining us on Meet the Gamechangers. Remember, peace is not the absence of war and conflict, but the presence of something much deeper: courage, justice, and humanity. Until next time, let's go forth and be game changers ourselves. I'll see you next time.
This is Meet the Gamechangers with Rev Kev, where we dive into the stories of people transforming our world one bold move at a time.